Another day, another call for investigations into just what exactly is going on in the White House. Last night, the Washington Post reported Donald Trump shared classified information with Russian diplomats during an Oval Office meeting last week. This morning, Trump defended the move, saying he wanted to share with Russia facts pertaining to terrorism and airline flight safety, which he has, quote, the absolute right to do. Hours later, National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster stood by the president.
I stand by my statement that I made yesterday. And what I'm saying is really the premise of that article is false, that in any way the president had a conversation that was inappropriate or that resulted in any kind of lapse in national security. What the president discussed with the foreign minister was wholly appropriate to that conversation.
Despite these assurances, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are calling on Trump to release any transcripts or tapes that exist from the Oval Office meeting. And this whole mess is doing nothing to quell the uproar from last week after Donald Trump fired the man who was in charge of investigating possible Trump ties to Russia. Some believe his actions are grounds for impeachment. Joining me to talk about all this are former U.S. Attorney Michael Sullivan, appointed by President George W. Bush. Michael, it's good to see you. And retired Supreme Judicial Court Judge Fernanda Duffley, who sits on the legal advisory board of the group Impeach Trump Now. Justice, it's great to meet you. Thanks so much for being here. Before we get to the I word, Michael, if I can, let's talk about this release of classified information, which virtually nobody with whom I've spoken says is an impeachable offense. But here's Bob Corker on the short list for VP with Donald Trump, chair of the Foreign Relations Committee. Here's what he says last night. The White House has got to do something soon to bring itself under control. Obviously, they're in a downward spiral, and they've got to figure out a way to come to grips with what's happening. The chaos that is being created by the lack of discipline is creating a worrisome environment. Obviously, he's a Republican. Do you agree with him?
I don't.
Why not?
Well, I think he's talking about some of the staff when he's talking about the White House, and I'm not sure that the White House is certainly under control. It appears to me that the president knows exactly what he's intending to do and does it. So that says to me he has control. Whether or not there's some people in the White House that might need some additional guidance, that's a different story.
A lot of experts in the intelligence community said he's putting at risk individuals with this release, jeopardizing relationships with allies, possibly inhibiting people in our own intelligence community from sharing information with him. You don't buy any of that?
I really don't. I'm confident that the president would be very guarded about information that might put United States interest at risk. And the president has an absolute right to essentially share and or declassify classified information.
He's right about that, Justice, is he not?
I'm not sure. An absolute right to declassify, even if it puts the country at risk, before, and there's no indication that he did, before he's actually consulted with individuals to determine whether the agreement he made with the country that he said he would share information with, to then disseminate it to an adversary of ours, Russia. I'm not sure.
When you heard his explanation this morning, well, you didn't hear, when you read them in the tweets, that essentially he was trying to warn them. He called it a humanitarian act, assuming that what he says is true. Does that justify what he did?
Humanitarian for whom?
To protect them from potential, maybe a laptop bomb or that sort of thing.
I don't understand it, frankly. I don't understand what he's trying to say, how he's trying to justify it. I think it was not well thought out.
You agree that even in the worst case scenario, this action, even by your telling of it, is not an impeachable offense?
I don't know if it's an impeachable offense, and it may be just bad judgment. I think if you put the country at risk, it's probably potentially impeachable. But that's not why I'm supporting impeachment.
Well, tell us why you are. Make the case about why you think he has committed impeachable offenses, please.
I think that no one is above the law, and maybe in particular people in power, and most certainly not the president. So when, for example, the emoluments clauses of the Constitution say that someone in his position can't take things of value from another foreign state, then that means you can't do it. And it's very clear, and there's not even a factual dispute about the fact that he has benefits.
Can we just stay right there on that one? I know there are other bases for your belief, too. That is beyond factual dispute. There's an issue as to whether or not the House of Representatives should charge him, but there's no question he has taken economic benefit from foreign government. Even at his hotel, Michael, just when he accepts even payment, when foreign leaders are now booking Trump International in D.C. when they weren't before, by definition, that's a violation of the clause.
Well, I'm not so sure that that's that clear. I mean, the United States Supreme Court has never ruled on what would be a factual basis for a violation of that law. The law was put in place to prevent U.S. dignitaries from accepting gifts from foreign governments that might influence some of their determinations. You know, the fact that he might be getting, or a business that he has an interest in is getting paid for services
might
rendered,
not affect his judgment?
I don't think it will affect his judgment.
You know, I'm going to make another case. I'm almost embarrassed to make it to you as a former justice, but you're a former justice. I would argue that even if he's in technical violation, the American people, who probably never heard of the Emoluments Clause, knew that he'd be in violation. When they elected a guy with so many business entanglements, if you were to stop the average person, they'd say, of course he's going to technically violate this thing, but until there's proof that it's affected his judgment or his actions, I don't really care about it. You buy that at all?
I don't buy that, and I'm not here as a justice.
I understand that.
No. The reason I'm here and the reason I care about this, and this is really why I care about it, is because I'm an immigrant. And I care about it because, you know, I grew up knowing that I was an immigrant, knowing that the reason we came here is because we fled an oppressive regime in Indonesia. My mother's Chinese, my dad's Dutch. This is where we came because we thought the rule of law pertained. That's why I'm coming forward now.
Make the case beyond the Emoluments Clause as to where you think he's committed a high crime or misdemeanor.
I think the firing of Comey. I think that's a clear interference with an
How so?
ongoing. It's an interference with an ongoing investigation, whether it's his own or somebody else's. You cannot do that.
On this note, here is the president speaking to Lester Holt the other night, which a lot of people think makes the case that's being made right here. Here is the president.
Regardless of recommendation, I was going to fire Comey, knowing there was no good time to do it. And in fact, when I decided to just do it, I said to myself, I said, you know, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story. It's an excuse by the Democrats for having lost an election that they should have won.
Now, we all know the day before was allegedly because he was mean to Hillary Clinton, but most people knew that was just the cover. He pretty much acknowledged here this Russia thing is ridiculous. This guy is leading the Russian investigation. You're the former U.S. attorney. That's not obstruction of justice to you, Michael?
No, it's not obstruction of justice.
Why not?
Well, for a number of reasons. First off, he is not the only person in the FBI that's participating in the investigation. He's head of the agency. The fact of the matter is the President of the United States has the right and the ability to put people in place that he has confidence in. I believe, and I know Jim Comey, I believe Jim Comey should have been removed from office the first day of President Trump's administration.
Which really has nothing to do whether or not the president committed an impeachable offense. I mean, the issue about whether he should have been dismissed and
well,
when
he should have been dismissed. And the fact of the matter is, you know, maybe he gave Mr. Comey far too much time to determine whether or not he had a level of confidence in Mr. Comey to leave the FBI.
What's your response to this?
I think that nothing supports that point of view. That he should, the point of view that he had every right to do it, if he should have done it then, and the fact that he did it 18 days later, that means nothing. I don't agree with that at all. It means everything. It means that he's gotten more information about all the things that made him concerned about an ongoing investigation and decided to do something about it, and he did. I
think there's pure speculation along those points. The fact of the matter is the president had a right to remove Jim Comey. Jim Comey should have been removed at the outset of his administration. He failed to do it. It should not prevent him from doing it at a later time.
You don't question that he had a right to fire the guy, do you?
He has a right to fire him. The question is the circumstances and the timing. And I am also not saying that he would be impeached, that is, at the end of the day, be removed from his office. I'm saying this is a confluence of events that does demand investigation.
Can I add one thing to the justices list here about this potential, bill of particulars, for lack of a better expression? The president also tweets out, essentially, what to me sounded like a threat. You better hope there are no tapes here. Basically saying to the guy leading the investigation, I wouldn't talk about this if I were you, because there may be that's not a problem for you as a former prosecutor, Michael Sullivan?
Listen, I'm not going to defend every single tweet that the president sends out. I mean, I think a lot of people would hope the president would spend more time on other things besides the tweets. And I would not necessarily have done the same thing. But I think the point he was trying to make is if there's a leak to suggest that Mr. Comey didn't say something, there might be a tape to contradict that.
You get the final word.
I wish that, I agree with you, I wish he'd spend less time tweeting and taking up so much airtime involving so many citizens in trying to understand what he's doing and when he's going to get around to learning how to be a president.
Well, the good thing we know is tweeting is not an impeachable offense. That's the one. Maybe the content is. Michael, thanks. Good to see you, Justice. Good to meet you. Thank you so much for your time.
Nice to see you. Thank you.
I appreciate it.